Moving on to my favorite part are the prepared speeches. Our first speaker says he's been in Monterey for almost 2 years. He's a submarine officer and has been in the Navy for 8. He's married with 4. I'm sorry, I don't mean to add on to you. I'm thinking of my house. 2 redheaded sons, ages 4 and 1 month old. And I think some of us have met the most quietest one that he has. Did very good when he was here last time. Being courageously to be inducted and give his icebreaker on the same day, a first since I've been here. Please welcome Stephen Cole.
Madam Toastmaster, ladies and gentlemen, I met my wife in Las Vegas. I was born in California, moved to Washington State when I was 5 years old. After living there for 12 years, my mom got a job teaching in Las Vegas. So we moved there in between my sophomore and junior years of high school. I stayed there for college, attending UNLV and cramming a 4-year program into 5. One day, I met this girl. She was also born in California, attended college in Washington State, and her family moved to Las Vegas and she joined them there in between her sophomore and junior years of college. She says that we met in Las Vegas in September of 2001. We met at a church where she was working and I was attending. If you ask me, we met in June of 2001. In July of 2001, she was getting ready to go on a mission trip to London for 2 weeks, helping out with the youth group from her church. I was getting ready to go on a 2-week sailing trip in the Eastern Caribbean. And I distinctly remember having a lengthy conversation with her the night before we were leaving in July about our upcoming trips, and I recall being very interested in her. She, however, was not interested in me. But that fall, that fall, I would ask her out just about every week after church. I'd invite her to go rock climbing, or swing dancing, or hiking. Sometimes I'd have a group ready to go. Other times I was just inviting her. Every time, she would give me some variation of the aphorism, no. Eventually, though, we started to hang out, and about this time, she started taking classes at UNLV, which was great because I got to see more of her because it was closer to where I was living on campus than the church was. And over time, we became best friends, started courting, and then in spring break, we got engaged in Sedona, Arizona. We almost got married the same night that we got our marriage license. Across the street from the county clerk's office was the Wee Kirk of the Header wedding chapel. And while it was tempting to have Elvis officiate our ceremony in an Irish brogue, we opted instead to have a party at some friend's house and get married there. It's always fun to tell people that we met in Vegas, and we like to see their reactions when we tell them that we got married there also. Since leaving Las Vegas in May of 2003, we have moved 7 times, covering 14,000 miles. While Google says we should be able to cover that distance in just over 9 days, we did it in just under 5 years. In that time, we've had 2 sons, like Madam Toastmaster mentioned. One is 4 years old and the other is 5 weeks old. We visited 8 countries, and we've gone on 2.5 cruises. I say half because in Thanksgiving of 2007, we joined 20 other people for an 8-day live-aboard scuba diving trip in the Bahamas on a 65-foot sailboat. The accommodations were somewhat like camping in that we shared a bunk that was just wide enough for 2 people, and in the same stateroom there was another couple on the bunk below us. Accommodations aside, we were able to dive 3 times a day, including diving each night. One of the highlights of the trip was a shark feed. So you can imagine in warm, crystal clear water, 50 feet deep, 20 divers kneeling in the sand in a semicircle about 10 yards from a ball of frozen fish and lobster that's attached to a rope floating about 10 feet off the seafloor. You can't hear anything other than your own breathing, and you're just watching these massive sharks swirl around and devour this frozen fish gut popsicle. Outside the mass of the large fish, sharks and grouper, there were countless small fish, scavengers, snatching pieces of fish parts that were tossed aside. Like the story that my wife told me about after getting back to the sailboat after the dive, there was a lobster head that was slowly bouncing its way toward us as medium-sized fish would come and tug it a few feet trying to get it away from the big shark frenzy, and then it would get scared off and another would swoop down and pull it a little bit closer. And as we were watching this, I noticed that my wife was no longer next to me. And where she was before, there were 2 tracks as she was still kneeling but slowly backing away. And she shared with me after the dive that she figured that if the sharks attacked us trying to retrieve the prize lobster head, that they'd get me first and she could get away. As you can see, we both survived and we still love scuba diving. We are looking to dive in Monterey Bay before we move this spring. In April, we'll add another 2 days of driving and 3,000 miles as we move to Connecticut. I'll be attending Submarine Officer Advanced course there. And then we'll move to Hawaii or stay in Connecticut, and I'll do a department head tour where I'll be an engineer or navigator or weapons officer on a submarine. So many adventures already and so many to come. While some say that what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, I can testify about what started with us, and I'm quite happy to say that after 7.5 great years of marriage, after 7.5 great years of marriage, I'm happy to say that I met my wife in Las Vegas. Madam Toastmaster.